Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Asher Marketing Podcast. Our guest tonight is Heather Castleman with Trelleborg. Heather, how you doing?
Hey, I'm great, Anthony. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us. It's good to, even though you and I are socially distant and doing this virtually, it's good to see that you're in Fort Wayne because you spend a lot of time traveling in an average year, correct?
Yes, that's right. Prior to COVID, pre-COVID times, it was regular for me to be traveling to our different sites all around the world, really, maybe as much as 3 times a month for some months. But yeah, that all stopped in February, and we've really had to innovate and still be able to connect with people around the world as a result of the travel restrictions. So yeah, I'm here in Fort Wayne and have been for many, many months now.
Yeah. So typically, where is it that you tend to travel with your work? We'll get into that a little bit more, but what are some of the spots where you find yourself going most often in a typical time?
Yeah, so my team and I travel, we're geographically dispersed. So I've got team members that are here in Fort Wayne. I've got some that are in Schaumburg, some that are in Illinois, some that are in Portland, Oregon, up in Wisconsin. So we're kind of geographically distributed as a team. But then also my team and I support all of our sales and marketing offices in the Americas, so North, South, and Central. So a lot of the traveling was designed to support those organizations, but I also serve on some global teams, and those are meeting in either Stuttgart, Germany, or other places in Europe. So mostly the travel is either throughout the Americas or also into Europe.
Wow. Well, that's impressive, and looking forward to hearing a little more about that. Well, as you know, on this podcast, we talk really about 3 things, one being your career path, another being the organization you work for, and then talk a little bit about some of the projects you're working on, some of the things that are top of mind with you right now. And I want to start with career path. You and I go back to a time when you worked at Do It Best Corp over 16 years ago now, I think. You have some history before that. I was doing my prep work, which basically amounts to about 5 minutes of looking at your LinkedIn profile. And I guess I forgot that you grew up in a different part of the world and migrated here. So tell me a little bit about, if you can take us back to your life in New York, if I'm right, and then kind of talk about how you ended up here and how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Sure. I went to college in Rochester, New York at Rochester Institute of Technology and graduated from there with a degree in professional and technical communications, and I had a minor in film and video production. And I didn't live in Rochester before that. I graduated from high school in Ohio, and just seemed to click. RIT just seemed to click with me and the type of program I was looking for, because I wanted it to be a combination of marketing and communications, but then also that film and video side. I felt that complemented really well. So programmatically, it was a good fit, but it also felt really good just from a kind of a culture perspective. I enjoyed the college, and that was really good for me.
Yeah, and this was when video was a special piece of equipment that you would carry on your shoulder and not something you would carry in your pocket, correct?
Yeah, you're reminding me that was like 30 years ago.
Yeah. So you grew up then in what part of Ohio?
Northeast Ohio, Alliance. So anybody that's a football fan out there, the Pro Football Hall of Fame was only 30 minutes from where I live.
All right. Okay. So Rochester, not too far from that part of Ohio.
Yeah, about 5.5 hours, 6 hours. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you earned that degree, and then what's next? Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So I stayed in Rochester actually, and I worked for my first job out of college was for a small manufacturing company, and I was doing all of their kind of marketing communications materials. So brochures. We did a little bit in terms of, because it was a small operation, we did some customer test reports and just kind of customer direct kind of marketing materials. And I was there for a little while. And then I moved on to a private Catholic school in Rochester, doing all of their public relations and kind of new student acquisition. So getting involved in marketing the school to families and kids that were seeking a private education.
Okay. All right. And then How'd you end up at Do It Best Corp? Because that's the next step, if I remember correctly, right? And that seems like
there's one in the middle.
Okay.
Yeah, there's one in the middle, and so I decided that at that point that I needed to move back to Indiana. At that point, my parents had moved to Indiana from Ohio, actually when I was in college, but it's it's much longer trip to get from Rochester to Northeast Indiana. And so I thought it was better to be closer to my family.
Okay.
And that was kind of a leap of faith for me. I didn't have a job that I was coming to here.
Okay.
But I thought, what's a better place to try to find a job than in an employment agency?
Yeah.
And so I got a part-time job working at an employment agency here in town. And my little gamble there kind of paid off. A couple of months after that, I got a job working for a business consulting company. And I served in that role for a year and a half, and was traveling all around the kind of the Midwest area, working in support of different project teams that this consulting company was doing. And that's really, I kind of joke, that's where I got my unofficial MBA, because I learned a lot about business, as well as the role that marketing and communications can play in helping businesses execute on their strategies. So that was a really good opportunity. And then after that, the opportunity at Do It Best came up, and that's how I then started working for a company here that was local in Fort Wayne.
Okay. All right. So that's kind of a winding road, but typical of what we've heard from others. And I'll just mention that while this podcast is very young, we've had a lot of folks with Do It Best connections. Ben Wally was a guest recently, who now has moved on to real estate. Tim Murphy was a recent who I know you worked with at Do It Best Corp. Randy Rusk.
I worked with Ben too.
And Randy Rusk was on the show not too long ago. So Do It Best alumni are kind of dominating the show. So tell me a little bit about I know you had a couple different roles, if my memory is right, at Do It Best Corp. Tell me how you progressed there, because you were there for quite some time, what you did and what that looked like.
Yeah, sure. I was there for about 7 years. Started off as the in-house video studio supervisor. So I was responsible for all of the video production, writing scripts for various things, either internal training videos or also any kind of special event videos that we did, executive speech writing, that kind of thing. And then a couple of years after I was there, I was promoted to being the marketing communications manager, which is how I got involved with Asher Agency, which really expanded the scope in terms of doing industry advertising, annual report production, media, press relations, and that kind of stuff. So. Okay.
All right. And obviously a global company, a big company, where it sounds like previously, you'd worked for smaller entities. What was that transition like working for a larger company?
The thing that made it a little bit easier was that transition from having worked in business consulting to going to Do It Best Corp. So a lot of the companies that we were consulting with in that engagement were larger corporations. And so I was able to get a feel for what it was like to work in a larger business as a part of those consulting experiences. So it was a little bit easier of a transition, but certainly getting to learn the corporate culture and how you navigate through that, I think is a relevant kind of topic regardless of the size of the organization. So it was certainly a learning curve to get to know the business model and then start to be able to communicate in ways that connected with the different audiences that we had in that business.
Okay, so 7 years at Do It Best Corp, and then, if I'm not mistaken, from there you moved on to the company you're working for today. So tell us a little bit about why you made that transition. Did they find them? Did you find them? How did that all work? And only share what you're comfortable sharing. But how'd you end up at Trelleborg, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so, irony of ironies, the very same placement agency that I worked with when I first made my move to Indiana kind of called me out of the blue and said that they were recruiting for a position at Trelleborg for a marketing manager. and wondered if that would be something that I would be interested in. And I wasn't looking for a job. I had no real interest in leaving Do It Best. I enjoyed the time that I had been spending there. But the thing that intrigued me was the opportunity to work in another really global organization. So while Do It Best had ties to different parts of the world, they were predominantly a kind of Americas-based company. With Trelleborg, Americas was viewed, and the United States in particular, was viewed as a growth market for them. So the majority of their business was over in Europe, with additional sales in Asia. And so, that was an experience that I thought would be very interesting. Here working for an organization or corporation that viewed my home geography as a growth opportunity,
sure.
And being a part of that. So that was the kind of the hook that got me interested, and and here I am, almost 17 years later. So.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Trelleborg, because when you say Do It Best Corp, I think most people, especially in Northeast Indiana, they have a sense of what that is, because it has a consumer side where you see the stores, it's hardware, it's something that people are familiar with. Trelleborg probably much more of a mystery to the average person. So tell me, what does Trelleborg do? What are the products that the company offers, and how do you explain it to people?
Yeah, so it typically, when people ask me where I work, like you say, it's either a blank stare or, like, what do you do? And we're a global manufacturer of sealing products like O-rings, gaskets, diaphragms, a component manufacturer that then goes into other systems that, make equipment work, basically.
Yep.
And one of the things we're kind of fond of saying is that you never really know about the seal or the gasket, the products that we manufacture, but you are never less than 20 feet away from one of them. So we've got products that are in nearly every automobile, every commercial aircraft, all the way to blenders and, food applications, semiconductor market. So into multiple industries, multiple applications, but it's kind of a component part that really makes a lot of these systems work the way they need to.
And headquarters for Trelleborg are where?
So our main headquarters for our entire corporation is in Stuttgart, Germany.
Okay.
But our Americas headquarters is right here in Fort Wayne. We actually have approaching 300 employees here in town, and we have those spread out over a couple of different buildings throughout the city.
Okay. So, most people have never had the experience of working for a global company. What's that like? And again, share only what you're comfortable sharing, but some of the challenges that people might not expect and some of the good things about it.
One of the first things that kind of struck me working for the company was that while, we're headquartered in a different country, our corporate language is English. And so it made communicating really fairly easy for me as a native English speaker who doesn't speak well in another language. But the thing that was also interesting to me, and that I have to keep reminding myself even to this day, is that when I'm speaking with global colleagues, their English is so good, you kind of forget that they're speaking English as a second language. Yeah. So it really forces you to slow it all down and make sure that they have time to process through what you're communicating, and doing in a way to make sure that your message is being heard. So that's been something that was a key learning for me getting started, and it's something I have to keep reminding myself even today.
All right. Yeah. What, if any, can you identify any challenges you've faced, things that, again, might be unexpected or kind of quirky challenges that you've experienced working for a global company?
Well, I mean, I think the geography certainly works against you for sure. Like, you can't just go over and, talk to somebody at their desk and, and exchange information. And so we do have a program actually that's been in existence for a couple of years now called One TSS. And the idea is that we're really focused on that collaboration and working together across the different business units within our company to really do and take decisions that are in the best interest of the corporation. And I think that's a really good program because it forces that collaboration and that communication when geography really plays a factor in being able to do that just kind of naturally.
Sure. So another thing I'd like to hear a little bit more about, and you've mentioned this briefly, but I'd like you to expand upon it. It's a large company, it's an industrial company, it's a manufacturing company. Talk about, if you can, your role and the team you work with. How does that fit into the big picture?
Yeah, so my team is approaching 50 people now, and we have a lot of different elements that we're responsible for in support of the Americas. Everything from acquisition integration and project management to supporting new sales channels to market, as well as a service, the service side of our business. But the thing that holds my whole team together is that we are really working at building capabilities that the business can rely upon in the future to drive growth. So it's about kind of taking what doesn't exist and figuring out how to create something that's sustainable, and then be able to effectively promote and communicate that out to our customer base. Okay.
All right. So you mentioned 50 people on your team. Do you actually oversee all 50 of those, or how many of them are your direct reports?
Yes, I have 10 direct reports, and then depending on the different ways that the teams kind of shake out, it's anywhere from a couple of people that report to the direct report, or the largest side has about 14, I think, in it.
Okay. So how much of your time do you spend managing and helping other people do their job versus actually doing your job and the hands-on stuff you need to do? How do you subdivide that?
Yeah, so Trelleborg, all of our managers are working managers. So, in addition to leading your team, you're also responsible for, for getting your own work done. And I'm really blessed with a great set of team members. And it's a privilege to be able to lead and work with all of them on a daily basis. So really where I get involved with my team, because it's new capabilities and we haven't necessarily done them before, it's really helping kind of remove obstacles, keep things moving forward in a productive way, and really helping them, do their roles, whenever there's a problem or something that needs to be resolved. So that's kind of my role with them from a management perspective. But then in terms of my own responsibilities, I get involved in working with our president in establishing our strategy and then working to execute it. So that's a large part of the work that I do for the business, and then working cross-functionally with other team members to help them understand our business strategy and secure resources for places where we might need help and support. So a lot of my roots in communications I draw on every day in helping the business move forward successfully.
So with all that, how was your team interaction? How was your work affected by the events of the last year, by the coronavirus pandemic? What changed, and how were you able to adapt as a team and as an organization?
Yeah, so it's been a challenging year for sure, because I tried to get around to each of, I said that we're a geographically distributed team, and I try to get around so that I can meet in person with all members of those teams. And then we also try to get together as a big team at least once a year, just to help facilitate, communication and fostering a sense of team spirit among the group. But that was, all paused in 2020. So we did a couple of things that were innovative, not necessarily innovative in general, but just innovative for our team in the past. And we do something, I implemented something called Together Tuesdays. We do this pretty much every other week. But we just get on a call just like this, and we talk, turn on our videos, video cameras, and, we just talk about things, not necessarily work related. So, it could be that today, we actually had one earlier today, and we were doing some new team member introductions, and just kind of getting a feel for things that we like to do and experiences that we've had, and just a little bit of informal sharing just so that we can connect together as people. I think part of the challenge we've seen with the virus is this isolation that you might have, and not having that regular interaction. So we try to do some things that kind of break that up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's actually one of the things that inspired us starting this podcast is even if, just connecting with people in 2 dimensions is better than not at all. Another thing I've seen in my professional life, I don't know if this has been true in yours, is that you almost get a better quality of understanding of your coworkers in an environment like this one, because day to day, you're mainly focused on, you're seeing them at work, you're focused on their work persona, and you're talking about work stuff with the occasional part of their life finding its way in. But when they're in that home setting, it kind of forces the issue of, oh yeah, this person has pets and kids and a spouse, and all of that kind of is right in front of you. And I think it leads to more substantive conversations. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, definitely. And, one of the things that our president did that was really very, very different, and we never would have done it normally, was that typically we all get together for business planning meetings in the early December kind of time horizon, just to make sure that we kick off the new year in a really positive way. And then she takes us out for a really nice team dinner. Well, we've never involved families in that. So what she did this year was that we were all on a call just like this with our families, with we all ordered from Grubhub or Waiter on the Way here in town, and we all had dinner together. But we never would have done that if we weren't in this environment, and it wouldn't have never even wouldn't have even been something we thought of to do. So that was really neat because we did get to meet each other's families. We had a little bit of game that we played with each other, and it was just a really nice kind of bonding time, at a very, very family-oriented level. So it was a great time.
Well, great. And hopefully Kent represented you well at that event. And
He did. He did. He and Ellie did a great job.
Okay. Good. You've trained them well. Well, one of the things that, the folks who listen to this podcast really like hearing about is any projects, anything you're working on right now that's sort of a big rock, something that's on your mind. It could be keeping you up at night. It could be making you excited. It could be simultaneously keeping you up at night and making you excited. Obviously, only share, stuff that's non-proprietary, but what are some of the things you're working on that are taking up a lot of your headspace and your time now and into the next, few months?
Yeah, a lot of it has to do with my team, actually. One of the things that I really try to do as an emphasis and as a manager is to help people realize their career objectives as well. So a lot of focus on development when you're a member of my team. And two members of my team were just promoted within the last couple of months. And so I've got, new team members that I'm onboarding, and we're really focused on trying to bring the team, my team of direct reports together as a group and get that kind of formed. So a lot of what I'm thinking about right now is in relation to that team dynamic. And, again, kind of calling on my communication skills to try to make that happen, just so that we form a really solid, connected group. And we feel comfortable relying on each other to help move the objectives of the business forward. So that's something that I'm working on right now. We're also in the middle of implementing a strategy where we're implementing some new channels to market. So we're establishing an authorized distribution network as well as an e-commerce platform, so people can buy our products online, and both of those are, working real closely with that channel team to make that strategy a reality. So, and that's been going very, very well.
So is that brand new? Did your customers have the opportunity to do reorders online in the past, or is this all starting from scratch?
Yeah, this is all starting from scratch. And, I know in this day and age, it seems kind of odd that you have a company that doesn't have an e-commerce kind of platform, but we're really a business to a B2B kind of a corporation. And so a lot of that customer service was being done all through a single direct channel. And what we're trying to do now is be a little bit more efficient and find ways to serve different portions of the market in ways that will actually deliver a better customer experience than lumping all of those customers into a single channel. So that's the crux of our channel strategy, and something we're in the middle of implementing right now.
Yeah, well, that sounds like an ambitious and hopefully fulfilling project when it's all done.
Yeah, definitely.
Any other big things on your mind? Any other projects that are kind of top of your list these days?
Yeah, we toward the end of last year, we just went through a fairly substantial reorganization where we, and this was also in support of our channel approach, but just trying to get a better arms around roles and responsibilities through the organization. And so, we now have a dedicated team that's responsible for customer service, and we have a dedicated team that's for sales and our technical support, and really just getting that kind of embedded and getting those roles really well defined and changed as we go forward has been a large part of our work from last year and into this year. So we're already seeing benefits from the kind of the structural changes we put into place there, where we're just being able to empower people throughout the organization to do what they need to take care of the customer, which is really what we try to do every day.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're spending, a decent amount of time on projects that are happening now and into the future, but also building for the long term, making sure that the business has the right talent in place to be successful down the line. That's a bit of a balancing act there.
Yeah, absolutely. In our organization, we have kind of two places that we think about. One is working in the business, so our existing capabilities that we have today to satisfy customers, grow sales. But then we also have a large portion of our thought process that's on working on the business. How do we make it better? What capabilities do we need to satisfy customers, not just now, but for the long term, and ultimately create a sustainable organization? We're really big into capability development here. We want to make sure that the systems and processes we put in place today will be able to, help sustain the organization on into the future.
Yeah. Well, with that in mind, I want to switch to our sort of speed round of the show where we synthesize the three questions we talked about, and that's a good segue into the first one. It has to do with career path. You told us a lot about your background and really a fascinating story of twists and turns and kind of how those transitions happen. But if you were talking to someone, maybe it's even your daughter, or maybe it's someone who aspires to work for a larger company, and you had to give them one piece of career advice, what's the one thing you would tell someone about being successful or fulfilled or both in your career?
Yeah, so a previous manager of mine once told me that at some point I'd be faced with a choice, and that would be whether I was loyal to my profession or I'm loyal to a company. And I've actually faced that decision twice in my career. And that person was kind of spot on in that assessment. And so I guess one thing that I would just say to anybody is to think about that as they're making decisions with their career over the long term, because you can be loyal to your profession and you can have a very rewarding career just staying true to that domain. But you can have an equally rewarding career if you're willing to kind of open your lens a little bit and see a broader perspective of the different opportunities that might exist within a company as well. So that's something that I found was really telling, and a good piece of advice I got, and and certainly something that I think would be relevant for people going forward.
Yeah, well, thanks for that. Now, the next one you've already answered somewhat because you're in the communication business and have a history in communication, so you do this all the time. But if someone were to stop you and say, okay, you've got a minute, you've got 2 minutes, tell me very briefly, what is this thing called Trelleborg? How would you describe it?
Yeah, we're a global company, a global manufacturing company that manufactures high precision seals, gaskets, and O-rings for very demanding applications, from the seabed all the way up into outer space, and everything in between. So that's a little bit about what we do. You're never more than 20 or so feet away from one of our products. You just don't know it.
Very well said, very concise, and an excellent example of concise communication. Good job. All right, last question. These are challenging times in a number of different ways. You've got an interesting perspective working for a global organization. A lot of people are struggling in a number of different ways, whether it's balancing, work and family as you do, working in an environment where there's a lot of uncertainty, economic downturns, shifts in customer demands. What's some of your best advice for people to persevere, to, stay optimistic and maybe see brighter days ahead with the times we're going through right now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we try to do on my team is we talk a lot about outcomes. And that can be around anything. It's not just a business outcome. It's, it could be a personal outcome. It could be feeling good about accomplishing something. And I think especially in this day and age, having that resiliency and being able to kind of take a step back out of the day to day and say, here's what I accomplished. It gets you a feeling like you are being very productive, that you're contributing in a good way to the company that you're a part of, or, your family life, anything like that. So if you kind of focus on outcomes and the way things that are moving forward, I think it can help a lot in just focusing on the future, and recognizing that there are going to be brighter days and good things ahead. So that's kind of the way that we've been approaching it on my team, and I feel like it's been pretty helpful.
Yeah, that's really insightful. I always say that in today's environment, you can feel like the work is never done. You always go home and there's another email you could answer, there's another article you could read. You get home and obviously the work of being a parent never ends. So it's easy to feel like you're never getting anything done. One of the things, when I'm hitting all my marks, I'll start my day with a list of usually 5 or 6 things and say, if I get these done, today is a good day, and not focus on the 94 things I didn't do, but say, okay, what I agreed to do today, I got that done, and that feels like a win when that happens. So yeah, I like that advice. Anything you'd add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty good. And, the key part for me has always just been trying to connect and, and really get that understanding with the people that I'm around. And when we can start from a shared point of, thinking about where we're at and, and really taking time to appreciate how far we've come, I think it's a good day.
Yeah, I agree. Well, hey, one thing I was going to do today was this podcast episode. So we did that. If nothing else, we've accomplished one thing on my list, and maybe it was on your list too. So thanks for doing it.
It sure was. Yeah, it sure was.
It's great to see you, even if only in 2 dimensions, and hopefully we can see each other sometime in the real world someday soon. Thanks again for being on the show. Really appreciate hearing about your background and the Trelleborg story.
Thanks, Anthony. I love it, and really appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
You too. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week with another great guest, and hope to see you then.